You can see that the screen has been cracked pretty badly. The first thing to do is remove the front bezel. You got to be really careful that the bezel doesn't crack because it's easy. If you bend it a little bit too far or push something too thick underneath it, it'll snap and you'll have to buy a new one. Take the top part of the bezel off first. Work your tool in slowly from the bottom to the top, and then slide it over across and then down on this side vertically, and then the other side vertically down. And once that's finished, you'll want to do the lower portion of the bezel, and it's not just the flat part that you see, there's also a curved part that covers the hinges. You can push down from the top on one side of the lower bezel to break loose some of the glue so you can have some room to work. And then put your tool in horizontally and push in towards the center. Only go so far and then go from the other side and push into the center also. Because if you try to go all the way through at once, it would greater increase your risk of cracking the bezel. Then you'll need to do some prying at different angles to get the rest of the sticky glue pried away. Just be careful, don't be too overzealous. It is easy to do. You can get really into this and just like, I want to get this done, but you need to be slow and careful. Once you get the flat part of the bezel unglued from the LCD, rotate the laptop, and then I'm going to switch tools and get a tool that has a tapered pointed end and push it right in each side of the hinge covers. It's easy to accidentally glue the bezel back to the LCD where the flat part is when you're doing this, and so you may have to work with it a little bit to get the glue unstuck. As you can see, the Chromebook itself turns on when the screen is lifted up. So it has a tendency to just come on from time to time while you're working on it. So you've got to make sure that you turn it off by holding the power key on the keyboard. Once the bezel is off, set it somewhere flat. Make sure it doesn't get set on top of something round or some cords, as it can crack easily when you have it off. Now there are going to be 2 screws. That's the great thing about this particular Chromebook. There's only 2 screws that you have to remove. But there is a lot of glue. So the glue is a harder thing to work with to remove. One screw is at the upper right side of the screen, and then the second screw is in the upper left side of the screen. Make sure you leave this sticky strip on the bottom that's attached to the LCD. You don't need to remove that. There's a top metal bar that's really thin on the top of the screen that I'm going to remove because it'll make it a lot easier for me to fit my tool inside behind the screen, where I'm going to have to remove some sticky putty-like adhesive substance. The adhesive substance runs down vertically either side of the screen, And it's very easy to crack the LCD. If this was a good LCD and you were trying to remove it, it'd be very easy to crack it while you're pushing your tool behind the screen to separate it. And it can also be very easy to crack the laptop LCD cover, the plastic part of the lid. Removing the putty does take a good amount of pressure force. So once you work your way down most of the way on the left side, switch to the right side, and then you can separate the screen enough to pull it away from the back panel, enough so you can actually reach further down and separate more of the putty. You don't have to worry about retaining the putty because in the box there is 4 new strips of adhesive. So feel free to pull the putty out of there if that's easier for you. And if not, then you'll need to remove the putty a little bit later once the LCD is moved away from the back panel completely. Dealing with the putty is a mess, and it is a problem because it is very easy to crack a good LCD just because of the adhesive. It would be much nicer for doing it yourself repairs if it relied only on screws. What we need to do now is remove this connector. So just peel this adhesive tape up, and then you'll be able to access the connector. You just peel it up like it's a piece of tape. I'm being slow and careful so I just don't rip anything. Once you have that up, you'll be able to access the metal bar that you have to flip up. I usually use a tool to reach in there and then flip up the metal bar. And once the connector is out, the LCD is completely free and you can dispose of it. Now is a good time to look at the labels on the LCD, so if you need to copy any of those down so you can research what LCD you need to purchase, pause the video so you can do that. This box has some tools and the new adhesive strips as well as a new LCD. On this paper it has the installation steps as well as troubleshooting steps. You can pause the video to read them. These are the tools that came with this new LCD. It has a screwdriver, it has a cutting tool, razor blade, it has tweezers, and a separator tool. This is the new LCD, and it also came with these 4 adhesive strips. They will go on the back panel, and then once they're there, you can lay the LCD screen onto those. Now I'm going to remove the putty that I left on there before. Some people like to pull it out from behind the screen. I didn't do it that way this time. Make sure you get all of the putty because it balls up, and if you have a thick ball still stuck on the back panel when you place the LCD on it, it could crack. You want to make sure everything back there is completely flat, including the new putty adhesive strips. You'll want to place these evenly. So there was only 2 adhesive strips before, but we're going to place 4 of them evenly across the back panel vertically. The goal is to evenly space these strips vertically on the back panel. When you place them, make sure you do so that the adhesive putty on the bottom is placed once and you don't have to move it, because it's so thin that if you move it, you might as well just rip it off and throw it in the trash and then have to buy some new adhesive putty. And I try to make sure that I don't put the strip on any other components like connectors that go across the back panel or on top of any of the barcode stickers in case I need them for reference later. Now you can take the LCD and lay it flat on the keyboard and then connect the connector, and once you slide the connector into place, make sure that the metal bar that holds it securely there is down, and then once that is finished, you can press the cloth tape down on top of that so it's flush and flat. I'm double checking my bar with the tool just to make sure it's actually all the way down, all the way across. I'm rubbing the adhesive tape there some in order to make sure it stays down. It has a tendency to want to lift back up. Now remove the backing from the adhesive, those blue strips. Be careful and gentle while you do this because it'll be easy to pull off the putty, and then you'll want to throw it away because it won't lay flat. As you can see here, I had an issue where the putty kind of pulled away from the backing panel and it became airborne. Now I have this little section here which I can't put down flat and evenly anymore. So I'm being very careful not to move the rest of it, and I'm going to cut off that piece right there and discard it. I'm going to use the cutting tool with the razor blade that was provided to cut across the bottom and top of that section, and then I'll be able to remove that part of the putty without messing up the rest of it. I'm going to repeat, the reason why I removed that piece is because the LCD would have a little bump in the back of it, which could cause it to crack later on during long-term use. Now it's very important to make sure that you line this LCD up right. So I'm lining it up with the metal brackets that are on the bottom of the panel near the hinges. Once that part is lined up, then I can lay the screen straight back onto the rest of the adhesive. You don't want to mess up doing this, because if you do, you'll have to be very careful and pull the LCD back off without cracking it, and then discard the adhesive and buy new adhesive and then try again. So it's really best if you do it right the first time. Now it's time to put the metal piece back in the top. The left side, the part on the left side goes underneath the metal screw hole that's there. And then the right side of that metal bar goes on the top of the right side screw bracket. It's easy to not know which way to orient this stuff. I was confused for a little while, so I had to flip it around a few times to make sure I actually put it in the right way. But once you have it the right way, it actually takes no effort to slide it in there. The hard part is just figuring out what's the exact right place to put it. I accidentally bent it a little bit also, which made it harder, so I had to unbend it. It just had a very slight bend in it, which made it not lay in the exact spot that it was supposed to. Now comes the easy part, where I'm going to put in the screw on the left upper side and then the right upper side. And now it's important to test the LCD to make sure it actually comes on before you put the bezel back on, so you can reduce the number of times you have to take it off and put it back on. As you can see, Chrome OS is there, the screen is working, the connectivity is working. What I'm going to do is do a quick power wash, because this computer is used by a lot of students. So I'm going to reset it back to factory settings basically and erase all the data. And then I'm going to peel off the screen cover. Make sure you don't forget to peel that off before you put the bezel on. And be careful you don't accidentally pull the Chromebook off the desk when you're peeling that off. The bezel can be put back on by pressing down firmly on all edges and also on the cover of the hinges. It might take several times of pressing down in different areas to get it to clip on. One way to make sure that the bezel is clipped on securely all the way around and on the bottom where the hinges are is to turn the Chromebook around on the side and upside down, and also close the lid and look at it from the underside. As you can see, the underside is a little bit separated, so I'm pushing it back together. And there you have it, we are done. I'm just double checking again to make sure it's good everywhere.